said to Sam when I was debating him is he said, well, a lot of religious people, and he sort of suggested that I, think that atheists can't be moral people. And I said, I don't think that that's true at all. I mean, the point that I'm making is you have to get to these values to have a civilization. How you get to those values, in my view, I think requires a leap of faith. You can make that leap of faith a variety of different ways, but you're going to end up needing these central values at root if you're going to build a civilization off of that. So whether you do that through, the kind of method that Sam wants to get to, what was weird is that, Sam and I come from completely different perspectives on virtually everything, but we share probably 90 to 95% of our values. Yeah. And so what I would suggest is that those values are rooted in a Judeo-Christian civilization that is mixed with a Greek civilization that brought us to the same place because we grew up 5 miles from each other. So of course we have the same values.
Right. His counter-argument to that basically would be that you're really talking about Enlightenment values, but you would say those values ultimately came from Judeo-Christian values.
The funny thing about that is that's actually a silly argument, that those are Enlightenment
values. I hope you guys will talk about this when you're on stage together in a couple weeks, right?
I think the biologists have already made short shrift of that. It's like Sam can't be an evolutionary biologist and say that the values that run Western civilization sprang from the Enlightenment. It's like you don't get to have those two time frames at the same time.
I may have slightly been putting words in his mouth there.
No. I disagree with you a little bit about the atheist issue because I think this is the reason. It's like if you think about the layers of the mind, with the iceberg analogy. It's like, well, you've got your patterns of action, and then you've got your justification for those patterns of action. You might think that those are rational, but then there's something underneath that, which is like the images that represent reality and the stories that represent reality, and then there's something underneath that even. And I think that to be religious is to have all of those things in order simultaneously. And I don't think that you can have an ethic that's only grounded in rationality, because I think the integrity of that rationality depends on the integrity of stories that you don't understand that exist.
So let me rephrase, because I actually agree with everything you just said. When I say that we have to agree on these values in order for us to build a civilization, how you get there is your own business, I mean on an individual level. I don't mean that every way you get to those values is equally valid. Right? I think that otherwise Sam and I would agree, right? I do not think that the mode of thinking from evolutionary biology to the values that I think are necessary for building a civilization are even...
I see weaknesses coming up in Sam's representations for this reason. The first thing is he has to dispense with consciousness, and he has to dispense with free will. And I actually think that's deeply problematic. And I think the reason he has to do that, and Dennett does it too, is because there is something metaphysically strange about consciousness. And you can't allow for that if you're a reductionist materialist. And so I'm more than willing to say, look, I don't understand consciousness at all. And the more I think about it, the less I understand it, because it seems to be the linchpin of being. Without consciousness, there's no being. You could say, well, the material reality continues. It's like, well, maybe and maybe not, because we do not understand the relationship between time and space and consciousness. So it's not self-evident that what you're saying is true. It might be true, but even if it was true, well, exactly how does the universe that has no consciousness in it exist? Like, how do you parameterize it? Does it have a duration? Does it have a size? Does it have any qualities? Like, what is it? Well, it's like a video game that no one's playing.
Right.
It's like, well, what is that exactly?
Well, this is where we get to, back to that 3-hour conversation that you and Sam had as to the nature of truth and what exactly truth is. And one of the things that I don't want to, critique Sam's ideology without him here to defend himself.
Although it's fun.
It is definitely fun, but we'll have to have Sam in here to actually do that, because it'd be a lot of fun. But one of the things that I've always found weird is that he and I have precisely the same notion of an objective truth, but I don't understand where he's getting his from. Meaning that, I'm getting...
and I don't either. And he also stresses...
Because if you base your viewpoint on materialist evolutionary biology, then what you would say is the truth is that which is most biologically successful, right?
That's the claim I was making when I talked to Sam.
Right, exactly, which is your claim, and also a claim that leads to religion, because biologically speaking, religious believers are more biologically successful than non-religious believers over the course of human history.
Religious belief evolved.
Right.
That's the thing. Not only did religious belief evolve, clearly it evolved. It's one of the human universals. The capacity for religious experience evolved. Well, you might say, why? Well, maybe you could take the viewpoint that seems to be characteristic of Steven Pinker and say, well, it's a spandrel. It's just a side effect of something more substantial. And my objection to that is, define your spandrels first.
Right, exactly.
You don't get to define them post hoc, you know?
You don't get to, right, you don't get to define away the side effects of the drug.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah, when people talk about drugs, very often what they'll do is they'll say, well, the drug is for a headache, but it has the side effect of causing you cancer.
Right.
It's like, well, no, the drug causes cancer.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not a side effect.
It's not a side, maybe the getting rid of the headache is the side effect.
Every one of those prescription commercials, headache, diarrhea, nausea, thoughts of suicide, et cetera, et cetera.